Good evening. You are on StratNews Global and also our evening program from Monday to Wednesday, The Gist. I am Nitin Gokhale, and today, like in the past couple of days, we are concentrating on the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and their importance to India. And we are asking the question, Andamans, should China fear the so-called metal chain? The chain of islands of Andaman and Nicobar are seen as a metal chain by some Western commentators, and something that can be used as a choke point against China is what they have commented upon. But we are going to discuss all that. But before that, some basic facts about Andaman Nicobar Islands. In fact, in recent times, the number of islands in this Andaman and Nicobar group of islands has gone up to 836. Only 31 of them are inhabited. There are two distinct groups, as you will see here, the Andaman group of islands and the Nicobar group of islands, in between which the 10-degree channel flows as far as these group of islands are concerned. The total EEZ, the exclusive economic zone of these islands, is 2.1 million square kilometers. Huge. It adds to India's EEZ coverage, really. And the landfall island in the Andaman group of islands to the extreme north is the nearest island to the Coco Islands of Myanmar, just about 18 nautical miles from the Coco Islands. And that's where it shows how close these islands are to the Southeast Asian countries like Myanmar, Thailand, and Indonesia. And of course, yesterday we had said they're about 1,200 kilometers from Calcutta, Vizag, and Chennai. But the important part here is that the 10-degree channel that runs between the Andaman and Nicobar group of islands, which you can see here, and the clear demarcation of the two groups of islands. The 6-degree channel, which opens up into the Malacca Straits, which are one of the busiest, sea lines of communication connecting the east and the west. And for China, one of the most important trade routes, I would say the most important trade route, where the shipping traffic is heavy. Most of it, the Chinese shipping traffic. In fact, Malacca Straits handles about 94,000 ships annually, according to one estimate. And if you look at the Chinese dependence on the Malacca Straits, it is very heavy. 64% of China's trade is from to and from Malacca Straits. 40% of the world's trade also flows through the Malacca Straits. In fact, we have the graphic coming up here for you. 80% of China's oil flows through the Malacca Straits, and 50% of the world's oil flows through Malacca Straits. So if you look at the Chinese savings, if they take Malacca Straits, you can take a look at the next map that we're going to show you. If they are forced to take a diversion, or Malacca Straits for some reason like the Suez Canal gets blocked, then the time penalty, just the time penalty for the Chinese is heavy if they have to come through the Lombok and the Sunda Straits. The map will just come up on your screen. In fact, this shows how important the Malacca Straits is for China. If they have to take the Sunda and the Lombok Straits in Indonesia or in the Indonesian vicinity, then it adds 3 days of travel or 5 days of travel to the Chinese shipping, which would mean $80 billion more than they are currently spending in either exporting or importing their goods through the Malacca Straits. So that's something that's a fact that shows that how Chinese are vulnerable as far as Malacca Straits is concerned. And the Andaman Nicobar Islands sit astride the Malacca Straits or the 6 and the 10-degree channels. That's where the geographical location is important for India and for the rest of the world. So we are going to discuss whether China should fear the so-called metal chain. And to discuss that with me, I couldn't have had a better informed person than Rear Admiral Sudarshan Shrikhande, former naval officer of the Indian Navy, of course, and someone who watches the Indian Ocean region, the Indo-Pacific, and the South China Sea very avidly, writes, comments, and participates in several programs. Welcome to this program, Admiral Shrikhande.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A pleasure to be back on your program.
Yes, you've been a regular on our programs, and we get you over because your knowledge of this region and the knowledge of the marine affairs or the maritime affairs is something that we always value. And today, in fact, we want to discuss with you the importance of the Andaman Nicobar Islands, and of course the Andaman Nicobar Command, which is based in Port Blair, headquartered in Port Blair. So tell us, what does Malacca Straits mean to China, and what do Andaman Nicobar Islands mean to the rest of the world? Is it a metal chain, really, as someone wants to describe it, or is something that has been exaggerated? Over to you.
Thank you. I would say that terms like metal chain or string of pearls, or as you know, so people have started referring to in the West as string of diamonds, as far as sort of uh, Indian so-called bases elsewhere are concerned, are actually unhelpful terms, because they are as unhelpful as the sort of Western way of saying that the Great Wall at sea uh, that China is building. The seas are an open medium. There are gaps everywhere. There are alternate routes available. We saw, when the Suez Canal was closed, it affected the world very badly, as you mentioned, in terms of the trade itself through the Malacca Strait potential. The Malacca Straits certainly are very, very important, not only to China, but to India, but to the rest of the world. Many East Asian countries, the states that border the Malacca Strait itself, in the littoral there, mainly Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia. They are vital straits. They are wide in many places. They are narrow in some places, and therefore, uh, unlike unlike the term often coined Malacca dilemma, as you rightly said, it's actually a Malacca vulnerability for China, and it's a vulnerability for everybody. So more than a dilemma, it's a vulnerability, and certainly for China, it is something that they greatly think about. They are probably taking countermeasures in terms of alternate routes. A point that you brought out is very important in terms of the cost of rerouting. If the Malacca Strait were to be guarded more closely in times of conflict, uh, that it would be an annual penalty of $80 billion. It could be even more, depends on what happens. But in if this is not to be seen strictly in financial terms, because $80 billion penalty a year is just a few $1 billion a month, and half of that, say, in a fortnight. So it's not all that big a problem for China. That rerouting will be done if required, and the Indian Navy would have other measures. Uh, Perhaps countries friendly with us would also take some measures, and increase the degree of difficulty for China to carry on its trade. But it's a resource heavy thing. It takes a lot of time, force, and effort, and the results are a bit slow. And yet, as you said, the strategic importance of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands is vital. It is a key to India's offensive as well as defensive capabilities all across the eastern Indian Ocean region itself, and right into the Indo-Pacific. So I think the strategic importance, as your map showed, are very real for these
Absolutely. In
islands of
fact,
ours.
the Andaman Nicobar Island and Andaman Nicobar Command is in its 20th year. As we have been talking about it for the past couple of years on our programs since Monday, it is getting some new assets, additional assets. It is gaining in importance, given that it is India's first tri-service command, and perhaps the only one in the strictest sense of the term, in that sense. But there are some concerns already expressed in the Indian as well as Indian friendly nations strategic calculus, that the increasing forays by the Chinese into the Andaman Sea, and their survey ships coming into Bay of Bengal in large numbers. The survey ships sending underwater gliders into India's EEZ. And some incidents have been reported that Indian warships have been keeping a close vigil, and Indian surveillance assets are keeping a close vigil on the Chinese presence there. In your view, why would the Chinese be interested in the Andaman Sea? Or is it because that they want to have an alternate route through Chakfu, Coco Islands, and then coming down from the Bay of Bengal into the Indian Ocean? Is that something that you would think is one of the possibilities, or it's just that they're surveying the seabed for seabed mining or other precious commodities that may be there underwater?
I would say, a short response to what you said would be, all of the above that you said. It could be this whole basket of reasons that you've, pointed out. Uh, Specifically, I would say that the Bay of Bengal is an area of great interest for India, and for the Bay of Bengal littoral, where India has created a lot of cooperative steps and measures with all the other countries, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, and in a sense with Sri Lanka also, as countries that surround the Bay of Bengal. And yet, Chinese interest in terms of its wanting to get influence with some of the influence within some of the Bay of Bengal littoral as an area for their own naval operations, perhaps to disrupt Indian naval operations there in times of conflict. All that, of course, requires a whole lot of. It always helps to get data for a likely uh, uh, battlefield, so to speak. But more than that, I think what they are doing is also gaining a whole lot of commercial information, which is certainly not permissible. And I do not know what the details are, what the Andaman Nicobar Command or the Eastern Naval Command are doing about it. But I think they would be well within their uh, requirements to be able to uh, reduce or prevent some of these surveys that are going on, especially in areas of our interest, in the exclusive economic zone, where much data that can be also talked about as only military data, which may be permissible under the existing UNCLOS regulations, can be used for even commercial use. And therefore, it's not only that commercial data is dual use for military purposes. Military data could also be commercially valuable, and that makes such research operations, uh, sending gliders, etc., into our area certainly a matter of great concern. And it is only right, therefore, that the Andaman Nicobar Command, the Indian Navy, are trying to uh, prevent some of this. In any case, I think they must be trying to keep a close tab on all these activities.
Indeed. In fact, we will talk about the Coco Islands and how it has got transformed over the years, especially since 2010, over the last decade or so. But also the Indo-Pacific, for instance, now that Indo-Pacific has gained traction because of Quad, because of exercises carried out by the French Navy and others. We will come to that. But today, interestingly, Admiral Phil Davidson, the head of the Indo-PACOM Command, headquartered in Hawaii, in Honolulu, in fact, spoke at the ORF organized and MEA sponsored Raisina dialogue, followed by Indian Navy Chief Admiral Karambir Singh also speaking there. Let's listen in what both of them said, one after the other, and then come back to the discussion. So first, Admiral Davidson.
This party of China seeks to exploit the current global pandemic with increased military aggression throughout the Indo-Pacific. Their aggressive actions include the East China Sea, the South China Seas, as well as the Indian Ocean region. And their intent is to undermine international law and norms. This is part of the Communist Party of China's campaign to supplant the established rules-based international order with a new order, one with Chinese characteristics, as they say, and one where Chinese national law would be more important than international law. So in short, The Indo-Pacific region is in a competition between a closed and authoritarian Beijing vision and the idea of a free and open Indo-Pacific. That said, the competition does not mean conflict. And I think those of us in the international community must be doing everything possible to deter conflict. And a resilient network of like-minded allies and partners, this includes our friends in NATO, and important opportunities to come together, like the exercise La Perouse, which just occurred in the last week. It's fundamental to our ability to deter aggression and ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific.
So Admiral Karambir Singh had a slightly different take about the Chinese Navy. In the sense, he didn't speak much about the Indo-Pacific, but something relevant to India and the Indian Ocean region. Let's listen into that and then come back to the discussion.
They have the intent, and each nation has its own goals and vision, and China is no different. And to my mind, I envisage continued focus and pace, focus on and pace of Chinese Navy's growth in the near future. As far as whether they'll move into the Indian Ocean region, we've seen regular Chinese naval presence in the Indian Ocean region for over a decade now. And if you realize where the Chinese look west from where they are, their energy, their markets and resources are located to their west. So it won't be surprising that soon they would be coming into the Indian Ocean region, because there's a saying that flag follows trade. As far as the composition of their carrier is concerned, the plans are pretty clear. They have got to accompany their carrier. They have the fleet support ships. They have just commissioned their Renhai class destroyers. So the point is very clear that their intention is to replicate something of the carrier battle group that the US Navy has. They have nearly all the components in place. But I think the most important thing that they'll have to develop is the competence and capability of their carrier air wing, which takes time. US Navy has been operating carriers since the World War. We finished 60 years, but I think the Chinese are moving quickly.
Indeed, Chinese are moving. Excuse me. Chinese are moving very quickly. So I want to focus a little bit on the Quad, the exercise Malabar, and the recent voices that have been saying that Andaman Nicobar Islands are an ideal place for setting up what they call a Quad Secretariat. So in that order, if you could give us some insights on what do you think about the Quad exercise or the Quad coming together, and the exercise Malabar first, and then the thought about Secretariat in Andaman Nicobar Islands.
Yes, it was very interesting to see, hear what CNS Admiral KB Singh mentioned, and what Admiral Davidson mentioned before that the clips that you showed. What our CNS was mentioning is very right. One of the things is that the Chinese are quick learners. They wouldn't have reached where they reached, in terms of great power capacities in diplomacy, in military, and in the economic spheres without being quick learners. So yes, I agree that they've learned quite quickly. And I would say here that I've used a line somewhere that as far as the Indian Ocean region is concerned, the Chinese have come to play, stay, and now have a say in what their interests are. I think they're becoming more vociferous, along with wolf warrior diplomacy. I think they are developing their shark's teeth here. They are quick learners, and I share that concern what CNS mentioned. That having been said, in terms of the Indo-Pacific and the Quad, these are in a sense related, and in some ways, still separate. The Quad, of course, has finally had a political leader, the heads of government summit, which was a very good thing. Let us hope now that slowly, more concretization will be done. It was a very good idea to develop the sort of COVID countermeasures internationally that the Quad is now at the center of, that would really give Quad not only a very good visibility, but in the process, I think it could save lives. It could do one great deal for humanity itself across the world, as indeed that was the genesis of the Quad, because it took its birth
Tsunami.
informally after the tsunami. So
That's right.
it's sort of walking along that path. But that having been said, certainly it's a quadrilateral security dialogue. So while all aspects of human security are included in that, um, political security of all the Quad members, the combined interests of indeed ASEAN states are very important to be factored into this. So therefore, the Indo-Pacific and the Quad uh, are, they need not shake hands. There are a lot of compatibilities already in this, and in terms of exercises, in terms of multi-dimensional military capabilities, I think there's a lot to be done. It's not only about exercises, but about operating together in areas other than sort of exercises. And for that, there is a lot of give and take that is required, which I think all nations in the political establishments and the military establishments might like to consider. In terms of the secretariat itself, I would say that, I mean, the Indo-Pacific is not yet an organization. It's a thought that has been around for a few centuries. Oceans are open. Oceans are hyphenated always. You can attach the Atlantic as a hyphen to the Indo-Pacific, something that the Chinese, I think, understand quite well. So therefore, in terms of the Indo-Pacific uh, and the Quad, more organizational efforts are required. In terms of locating a secretariat, I think in the Andaman Nicobar Islands, I have also seen some reports or some thoughts on this. I don't think it's a very necessary thing to do. It might only, create excitement without bringing the corresponding efficiencies that are required into the Quad itself. And I think wherever that Quad secretariat is set up, in whichever of the countries of the Quad or Quad Plus, as it might hopefully be someday, is a matter of uh, political negotiations between the countries in terms of where it might yield the best results. And not knowing much more about this, I would say that wherever the Quad secretariat comes up, if it does come up, ought to be in one of the capitals. I think that's where
I
it
think
matters the
the
most.
efficiencies will come from there, and the effectiveness will be there, in fact. And in today's
Yes.
interconnected world, I think it doesn't matter where you're located because all of us are working from home or working from anywhere, actually. Like we are
Yes.
now talking and sitting across nearly 2,000 kilometers apart and
Yes.
still doing this program. But
Absolutely.
one more question I had about the Andaman Nicobar Command, because I think a lot of Western countries, especially the US, eyes Andaman Nicobar Island and the facilities on the island under the Andaman Nicobar Command as something that they would like to use, maybe for refueling, maybe for basing some assets, or maybe getting India to base some assets there, surveillance and reconnaissance, which will feed into the IFC IOR as it is called. And maybe going forward, India will have to really strengthen and get the ANC expanded. Would you think that is possible now?
At the Indian sort of national level, there is, to my mind, already a lot of development going on in ANC, as some of your programs on this series have already alluded to and explained, and I'm sure there will be probably follow-on programs about the Andaman Nicobar. There's a lot that is happening, a lot more that can happen. In terms of security, there is, as I understand, a lot of effort being put into ISR enhancement. That is, from the mainland of India, that provides ISR support to the Andaman Nicobar Islands itself. But ISR at the geographic levels of the Andaman Nicobar itself needs to be built up. I'm sure a lot of thought is being put into this within the military establishments in India, in Delhi and in Port Blair itself. Apart from that, I think there are more air bases coming up, more port facilities, perhaps more ships that are per permanently based there than where say, let's say, even 5 or 6 years earlier. There are a lot of logistics facilities coming up there. And in terms of international participation, I think for several years the Milan exercises, the sorry, not the Milan exercise, but Milan itself as a gathering of navies
Yes.
used to take place
Like-minded
in the
navies. Yes.
Andaman Islands, and if I'm not wrong, more than a dozen countries used to participate with ships, as well as even more with observers and delegations. So that has been going on. In terms of uh, permanently basing, assets from other countries, or permanently basing Indian assets in, in countries that are friendly with India, I think these are major political steps. At a military
Definitely.
level, this can be done, in the ma- in the ma- in the matter of a few days. But these are political questions that need to be decided at the highest levels in any government. So therefore, in terms of turnaround, or in terms of logistic stops, etc. If I'm if I remember right, a few months ago, an American maritime patrol aircraft did land and fuel, and then again take off from somewhere in the Port Blair, in Port Blair. I think foreign ships, when they've come for Milan exercises, have refueled and been provided logistic support within Port Blair and elsewhere in the Andaman. So the possibility remains. The contours of what degree of constancy that is required, or what frequency is required for such transits and such forays, etc., are decisions, I suppose,
At the
at the
highest
head,
political level.
at the highest levels, HQ, IDS, and the service chiefs would be
Sure.
probably thinking about these things.
Indeed, they could be. But one of the other concerns in the smaller Indian context in Bay of Bengal and Andaman Seas is also, I just want to flag that the Coco Islands, which is just about 18 nautical miles from India's or Andaman Nicobar's extreme north island, the landfall island, that has got developed into a major military base from open source imagery that is available on Google Earth, for instance. Look at the pictures here. In 2006, there was no airstrip there, and now in 2020, the airfield there is looks like a major airfield. Some say that it is about 2,900 meters long. There are some hardened shelters being built in on the island, maybe to base some fighter aircraft there. And increasingly, the Myanmarese Navy and sometimes the Chinese Navy ships are visiting Coco Island. And that should be a bit of a matter of concern for India. And I think because of that, some countermeasures like basing some detachments on Landfall Island and in North Andaman group of islands has been taken off late. How would you see the development of this Coco Island as a major military base for India's security?
Yes, these are matters of some serious concern for India, if indeed they are happening, and if uh, Chinese ships have been noticed very close to Cocos, because there was a time when this was still a possibility in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. Today it seems to have become a reality. Now we do not know what is the permanence of Chinese usage of these facilities, but I would just take back that in terms of strategic thinking, we need to think of various possibilities, and there are some lessons from history, and where modern technology enables different ways of uh, uh, deploying these lessons. And one, I would just like to take the viewers back to the situation with Belgium in the First World War, as well as in the Second World War. Now, Belgium was a declared neutral country, where the Germans in both wars had decided that neutrality be cast aside. It will be best for us to invade France through Belgium, and invade the lower countries in terms of Denmark, etc., also through Belgium. So they did precisely that in both the world wars, accepting the escalatory consequences of that. Now, with the kind of missile power, long range aviation that that China has, which can have bearing not only for targets in the Andaman Nicobar Islands, but indeed ships at sea. We have to look at this with concern, and I'm sure the people charged with
Entrusted with
looking at
this,
this are
yes.
monitoring this very carefully, as indeed I think your visit seems to have shown that these are being taken very seriously, and I think we should watch this space seriously, because many nations might have certain vulnerabilities of the regime in power at that time, and should a conflict be imminent, then the kind of pressure that can be brought into that regime for overflights, both by aircraft as well as overflights by missiles, which can probably
Sure.
not be noticed at all, could
Exactly.
be concerns that we need to keep in mind.
Absolutely. In fact,
And
that is, I
while
think,
we
what
have very good relations with Myanmar, uh, you know, uh, uh, arm twisting is a possibility.
is an engine game also. So it is a
Yes,
possibility.
absolutely.
But
Yes.
one final, in fact, indeed, because of all this, the Andaman Seas and the Bay of Bengal has become quite a favorite, I would say, ground for exercise for different navies. And we'll just show you as we wind up the footage of India and Russia exercising in the Bay of Bengal or near the Andaman Seas, which is this video actually, the joint exercise just about a couple of months ago, and the exercise between La Perouse, I think, between France, Australia, India, and United States also took place in the Bay of Bengal and off the Andaman Nicobar Islands. That shows where we are and how people are shifting their attention, or at least giving more attention to the so-called metal chain. And I think we agreed that it may be an exaggeration to call it a metal chain, but nevertheless, the geographical advantage is with India, and I think India should be exploiting that geographical advantage to the hilt in coming years, in the coming decade. But Admiral Shrikhande, thank you very much as usual for your very insightful comments and your knowledge on maritime affairs in and around India, and of course the Indian Ocean region. Thank you, viewers, for joining us in large numbers. We will keep bringing to you such different programs, some reporting from the ground, but most of the time analyzing situations which are not normally the focus of mainstream television media or the newspapers. But do keep watching the gist from Monday to Wednesday, and of course keep looking at our YouTube channel, subscribing it to it, and of course like us on our social media handles. All of you know how to do that. It's all available in the public domain. And thank you very much once again for joining. Until the next time, it's goodbye.